My name is Therese Sweeney. My podcast is called Therese Makes History. I'm a historian who's had digital media skills for many years. Season 1, The Dairy Lane Project. Today I bring you the final episode, episode number 10. This season has been supported by Sth Co, our region's largest agricultural employer, operating for 40 years and located in Jasper's Brush. Also McGoldrick's estate agents in Berry. They've been there since 1987. Tim McGoldrick leads an incredible team who sell luxury properties, farms, acreage, as well as houses in new estates that are popping up. They rent out luxury properties for people to holiday at. Thank you both for your support this season. The title to episode 10 is The Davis Family on the south side of the swamp. Samuel Thomas Davis was born in Portland, England in 1835. He married Susan Anthony on the 17th of August 1886. They migrated to Australia on the ship Hindostan, which left from Liverpool and arrived in Sydney on the 12th of August 1887. Susan was pregnant with their first child. They were of Methodist faith and settled at Milton on the Sth Coast and had 7 children there. Firstborn John, 1857. Sarah, born 1860. William, born 1862. Edward, born 1863, Robert, born 1866, and Caroline, born 1868. The youngest son, Robert, married Selina Knapp in 1890. Selina was born in 1868, and they too had 7 children. Stella, born 1891, Oswald, born 1893, Dorothy, born 1896, Dulcimer, born 1899, she was known as Dulcie, Raymond, born 1902, Leo, born 1906, and Merle, born in 1910. Leo Davis, the youngest son, is Laurel Kellett's father, who I am engaging in this recording. He later farmed with his father Robert at Meroo Meadow. Robert Davis, Laurel's grandfather, moved up to Meroo in January 1923. Leo was 16. Robert was influenced by Uncle Jim Knapp, who told him there was a farm for sale. James R Knapp, as Jim is known, ran the cattle stud Swanlea in Bolong. 6 of his prized specimens are featured in the 1920 publication A History of the Illawarra, which I have referenced previously in episode 3 of the Boxels. Jim farmed at Bolong from 1918. Leo Davis farmed at Meroo with his wife Minnie, who he married in 1923. He's Laurel Davis's father. Laurel married Harry Kellett, whose family date back in the region from the late 1820s. Harry was 12 years older than Laurel. So today I am recording our final episode of Season 1 with Laurel Kellett, who is 86 years of age. We recorded this episode at her home in Bomaderry. How are you today, Laurel?
Very well, thank you.
What's your full name?
Laurel Wilma Kellett.
Where did you grow up?
At Meroo Meadow.
Whereabouts exactly?
Opposite the Silos Winery, or Wiley's.
How much land did your family have, roughly?
Would be rough. I'd say around about 100 acres. Wouldn't have been big.
What year were you born?
1938.
Where were you born?
In Narra. I don't know where I was born. It could have been the hospital. I know my brothers were born in Junction Street in that little hospital.
You have other siblings. What were their names? And
3 brothers, Graham, Bob, Robert, I should say, Robert, and Evan. They were all younger than me.
Okay. What are your first memories as a kid in the landscape at Meroo? Did you have cows?
Yes, we had milking cows.
Do you remember the type of cows?
Yes, Illawarras.
What sort of dairy? Was it a walk-through or how were they milking?
Yes, milk walk-through.
Did you ever work in the dairy?
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about what you did?
Oh, put machines on and off and brought cows in and took cows to a paddock, wherever they were to be fed. Put them in the stalls, because we fed cows in the stalls.
Well, you had a silo?
Yes, we had a silo. And as kids, when they were filling the silo up with the corn, as it got up a bit, we'd jump out a window down onto the silage.
I have a window, so it had a few windows going up.
Yes. And as you filled it, the window got blocked, so it had a ladder to get up to every window.
So it was there when you were born?
Yes, it was built before I was born.
And how many cows?
I've got no idea, but I reckon probably only about 30, if that. That was common.
Tell me about that. What did your neighbours look like?
Oh, our neighbours were Turners, Thorbans, Wileys, and we were on the swamp, on the Jasper's Brush swamp, and our neighbours there were Irvines, and they came in from Bolong. Their farm came in from Bolong. My uncle Ray Davis was our neighbour, and Isons were a little bit further along the road.
So Ray was your father's brother?
That's right.
Tell me about your parents, their names, and who did your dad marry?
Dad married Minnie Goodger, and she came from Camberwarra. Actually, they relocated from Camberwarra to Harley Hill, and I think that's how Dad met Mum, probably at the Methodist church.
So your father's name?
Leo Vane Davis.
Tell me a bit about your spirituality, your family and the church.
Oh yes, my grandfather Robert Davis was a lay preacher, and we've always gone to the Methodist church at Berry.
That was part of the community as well?
Yes, definitely the community. And we had fellowships in there. I went to fellowship and Sunday school. Then when I got married, I went to a younger women's fellowship, and although it was at the Methodist church, we had ladies that probably never been to church that came down to those groups of a night. I think they were once a month.
And what did you do?
Oh, we had social functions. I can't just remember what sort of social functions. We might have speakers, things like that. I know here recently I saw a lady from Berry, and she said, I would never have known you, only that I came down to that fellowship, and it probably was 50 or 60 years ago.
How many women would attend them?
15 to 20.
So the church was in Berry, and you have a long affiliation with that church, do you? Your family?
Yes, we did, although Harry and I have moved around a bit. I now belong to Bomaderry, but I still go back to Berry now and again. I think you go back to your grassroots.
So Harry's your husband?
Yes.
How did you meet Harry?
At a dance at Camberwarra.
Who was playing and...
Harley Dobell and another lady. Harley Dobell was on the drums and another lady played the piano, and they had a dance twice a month, I think. There were dancers out there. Wileys, our neighbours, they were dancing teachers, and then I went to dancing lessons with them. Then Mum used to take us up to Camberwarra to dance. My mother, of course, originated from Camberwarra, so we'd go back to Camberwarra to our relatives. They were Goodgers, and there's still Goodgers up there, and they're all related to me.
So that's Minnie?
Yes.
Do you remember any of Minnie's sisters or brothers?
Yes. Mum had a brother called Bert Goodger, a sister called Ivy, and she was Ivy Bevan, and Mum.
What did you wear to the dances? Did you make your own dresses?
Oh, I probably did then, because I went to TAFE and did sewing lessons for a few years.
Okay.
So, yes, I would have probably made my own dresses.
Well, you went to TAFE, so was that before you were married? Or?
Yes, when I left school I went to TAFE. And I learnt dressmaking, white work, millinery.
White work wedding dresses?
No, underwear, mainly.
Tell me about that. What fabrics were they using to make... No, just out of interest. Was it cottons or...
Yes, we had cottons, but we had silk sort of material.
What was the course called?
White work.
Because it was white underwear.
Well, yes, and you had we did fancy work with that.
What does that mean? What's
Like,
fancy? Bit of lace?
Yes, lace and handwork on lace.
Okay.
So...
That dog's... I'm going to kill that dog, by
Oh,
the
I'm
way.
going to kill that dog too.
You didn't tell me you had a dog that barked.
Well, I don't know why they bark. I don't know why the neighbour doesn't throw a stone at it.
So you're sewing, are you? Your
Yes.
needlework?
Your needlework, yes. You did use your machines as well. Fine work, you did it handwork.
Are there particular stitches that have names?
Oh, there probably are, but I can't remember them.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, yes.
And how long was the course for?
Oh, 2 to 3 years. I think dressmaking was 3 years. And I did the other courses as well. Oh, I did millinery and flower making. That was another course I did. I can't remember what else. In those years, you wore a hat to everything. Oh, excepting to a dance. You didn't wear a hat. But people wore hats. Oh, well, I don't know what there is to describe about a hat. A hat's a hat.
The shape of them, were they...
Oh.
Did you have... Whatever the fashion was, you...
Yes, probably whatever the fashion was.
But that's quite a craft.
Well, yes, but you don't see it anymore.
No, that's why I'm asking you about it.
Don't see it.
Where was the TAFE?
Down here at where it is now, on the highway.
Were there a lot of women in the class?
Yes, there were a lot of women in the class.
Just women?
Yes, the boys had carpentry and mechanics.
What sort of machine were you using?
We would have used Singer machines mainly, but I did have a Benina, which I've still got one now, but I don't use it very often.
Were the Singer machines foot pedals?
Yes, I can't remember me using one without power. I think it was power all the time I was at TAFE.
Who supplied your fabrics?
Oh, we bought them at Morrison's fabric shop in Nowra.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd go to Sydney or somewhere like that if you wanted something a bit different.
You went to Bomaderry High School?
No, I went to Nowra Intermediate High School.
And where was that located?
On the corner of Plunkett and Berry Street. It's still there now.
Did you play sport? Did you
Yes,
play...
I played tennis. I played tennis at in Berry. I played tennis in Nowra. I played night tennis. After I was married, I think I played midweek tennis. Sometimes out at Farm Meadow, sometimes in Berry, sometimes in Nowra.
So it did move around a bit? Have
Yes, at
competitions?
the competitions, yes.
Did you play at Lemons Lane? Did you play with the Mullers on their tennis court?
Oh, no, but I did play with Mullers at Jasper's Brush, on the Jasper's Brush School tennis court. That would have been before I was married.
What else do you remember about growing up as a kid? You've got the dairy cows. You've got a photo there of some tractors with iron wheels on them. Why would they be using those?
That tractor came from down Milton way, I think, and because Dad and his brother used to go and get timber out of the bush. I don't know who they cut it for or why, but I'm sure that's where Dad brought the tractor from. And the iron spike wheels were like the four-wheel drives have replaced that. I'm sure is how that worked.
Yeah, because they would have given it stability.
That's right. We also had a Ferguson tractor.
So what was the name of that spiked one?
McCormick Deering.
Deering, yeah. And
I never drove it. I know Dad did. I only drove the Ferguson. But the Ferguson had tyres on it just like a car. Well, we used to take the milk to the road. I can't remember taking the milk to the road on the tractor because when us kids got a bit bigger, or Graham and I anyway, Dad got an old truck. We used to drive that, take the cans to the road and put them on the milk stand, and then the milk truck would come along and pick them up.
How many cans were you putting there?
Oh, 2 or 3.
So the slide, you had draft horses?
Yes, we had 1 draft horse, but I believe there were originally 2 out there, but I don't remember 2. But I remember 1, and her name was Sadie. I never had anything to do with driving the horse. Mum and Dad went for a holiday, and they left Graham and I at home, I and Bob at home, with Grandma and Grandma Goodger and Mum's cousin Percy Goodger, and he did the milking with us kids helping him, and he must have used the horse then. But when I got married, because Harry's farm was very hilly, he had a horse and slide, and he did have a tractor as well, but most of the time he used the horse and slide because of the hills. My first child, Jane, was about 6 months old, and Harry got the flu really bad, and we had corn at Camberwarra, and I know I had to go up and cut the corn and put it in piles, and I took Jane with me, and I used to sit her on piles as I went. And I cut the corn, then I came home and he got out of bed and went up and got the horse and slide and brought it back, only because I could not use a horse. I didn't know how to handle a horse. I could drive a tractor, but I couldn't drive a horse.
How were you cutting the corn? What with?
With a corn cutter. It was like a short handle, bigger than a knife, but it looked like that. It was thicker than a knife, and you just cut the corn. Chopped it, yes.
How much did you have to clear, roughly?
I don't know. Might have been 10 or 20 piles of corn. I can't remember how many acres. It was a good-sized paddy. He'd put it through the chaff cutter and we'd feed it to the cows.
So do you know what sort of chaff cutter he was using?
No, I've got no idea.
Did he chaff it in the paddock?
No.
No, he chaffed it.
Brought it home and put it through the chaff cutter.
Did you ever put corn in the ground? Did you ever bury silage?
Not at Camberwarra, but we did at Far Meadow.
Started at Meroo.
Yes.
And what school did you go to there?
Meroo Meadow.
And who were some of your friends there?
Leila Hitchcock, Elaine Hitchcock, Margaret Hitchcock, and then there was the Thorburn girls, and there was the Turner girls. They lived more or less next door.
And what were their names?
One was Mary Thorburn, but I can't remember the other girl's name. And then there was Turners, and I think one was Wilma Turner, and they lived in Turner's Lane, which was next door to us.
Do you remember what post office you went to?
Yes, Jasper's Brush.
It's interesting because you're in Meroo.
I know, we were in the middle.
You were on the border.
We were on the border. We went to Meroo School and we went to Berry for everything else.
Which School of Arts did you go to?
Oh, Meroo.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever going to the School of Arts at Jasper's Brush, but
you remember the railway there?
Oh, we had to cross the railway every time we left home because we lived on the bottom side of the railway. There was gates for us to go through. Other than that, if we were going over to Wiley's, our neighbours, I would go through our paddocks, under the railway bridge, through another Wiley paddock, cross the highway and to Keith Wiley's, because I'd go over there to see Judith and Margaret.
Was the highway a dirt road?
I can't remember whether it was a dirt road or not, actually. I can't remember that. But it was nothing like it is now. Wiley's Bridge used to have a bit of a bend on it, and I know there was often accidents round about there. People would go into the gutter. Well, there were two families of Wileys. There was Fred Wiley's and Keith Wiley's. We spent a lot of time over there in school holidays when we were kids. Wiley's Creek come across the highway and on the edge of our farm and went towards Bolong or down into the swamp.
So tell me about the swamp.
Yes, when we had floods, we had water. We always probably had enough land left for the cows, But that's all I remember about the swamp.
So when you're saying you had enough water, so when it rained there'd be enough for them to go dry somewhere?
Yes, plenty of room to go dry for a dry paddock.
Did the swamp have any drainage?
Well, there was drains down there, but not, I don't think up our end, and I think the drains would have been down on Eden Irvin's farm, which would be Bolong, part of Bolong. And I think, but I don't remember Dad talking about drains, but he could have, because we may never have taken any notice or anything, but there was always plenty of water down around when we had floods.
All the bird life?
Don't remember any bird life.
Not when the floods came?
No, don't remember bird life when the floods came. And I know we used to paddle in it, and nowadays, every time we get a flood, they tell kids and people not to walk in the water because there could be snakes. Well, we don't remember seeing snakes, and we used to paddle in it because often you'd go to flood in the summertime, wouldn't be always in the winter. Don't remember us swimming in it, but we used to paddle in it, and the water receded, and then it would leave the paddocks brown because there would be mud left there. But you'd get rain a bit later on and it seemed to clean up, and the same thing happens today, so sure is wet. Oh, yes, there's been some bad floods, but and I know people have been washed away, and I know people down Bolong had to be helicoptered off the roofs of their houses. In later years, there hasn't been the floods we had when I was young, and apparently during the war, I believe, and I can remember the peas being grown, but I didn't realise it was during the war, they grew peas and potatoes because the government wanted them to have food for people. And I know the corn paddock was between the railway and the main road on our farm. And I can remember a lady coming out from Berry, she wasn't the only one, and used to pick the peas. And I don't remember anything about the war because our parents didn't talk about it. I know you couldn't have lights on, but that's all I do remember. And I remember Dad had a truck, ran on coal or coke or something. But that's all I can remember. Yet people younger than me that were born in Sydney can remember a lot of things about the war.
What sort of person was your dad?
Oh, he was happy-go-lucky sort of a man.
Was he a good farmer?
Oh, I think so. And he was a handyman, good handyman. He was a bit mechanically minded.
What about your mum, Minnie?
Yes, she used to milk apparently. I don't remember Mum really doing milking, but she must have before we were big enough to milk.
Where did you go from Meroo School? Where then?
I went from Meroo School to Nowra High School.
Okay, so that's what
That's
you were talking.
the only school I went to. Only 2 schools.
How would you get there to Nowra?
Bus.
How would you get around as kids? Did you have a car?
We didn't have a car till I was more than 8 years old. I remember going to Sunday school and people by the name of Kerrys used to pick me up. They lived at Meroo, and they used to pick me up and take me, but I had to walk. I walked to the road, to the main road. Now and again we would go back to Milton to Dad's relatives, and he would get a lend of his brother-in-law's car in Berry.
So what were the roads like driving to Milton? The highway, as we know it.
They mustn't have been bitumen, but they must have been fairly well graded.
So just on that note, because that's where your father's side came up from Milton.
That's right.
So who are your dad's parents?
Dad's parents was Robert and Selina Davis.
And what was Selina's former name?
Knapp.
Okay, okay. So you've got here your grandfather Robert was born on the 17th of August 1866 and Selina was born in November in 1868. Do you remember them? Were they alive?
My grandparents?
Yes.
Yes, I remember my grandparents in Berry.
The Davises came from Milton.
Yes. The Davises were at Milton and they had a farm. And they left. My grandfather decided, and I'm only presuming, that the farm wasn't big enough for 3 boys to be on. So he decided that he'd come up and look for a farm up here. Grandma had relations up here, Knapps, at Bolong, so he came up and...
They were here in the early part of the 20th century.
Yes. Well, Grandpa rode up. I think the farm he bought at Meroo was already a farm, so he bought the cattle at that farm. Just bought it. They did in those days.
Yes, they bought
walk in and walk out sort of thing. But he came up and stayed with the Knapps at Bolong, I know that. He came back. I'll just go back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
The property was at Jasper's Brush and on the main highway. Hand milking at that time, so remember it was hand milking, there were no milking machines. Leo was 16 years old, and then his father had to go back, must have been after they got here, and his father had to go back and bring a horse and cart with furniture and clothing. Dorothy had already gone to Balmain for nursing, and Merle finished school at Milton. She was the younger one of the family. She finished her schooling at Milton before she came up. So with her mother came to Jasper's Brush. The farm got sold, or Grandpa bought the farm, and Dad and Mum lived in one house, and they had to build a second house because they decided to cut the farm in 2. So Ray Davis had part and Leo Davis had the other part.
So there was a couple of girls there too, were they? What were their names? Your aunt...
Dulcie and Merle and Stella.
They were Leo's sisters?
Yes, they were Leo's sisters. And they've all married after they came to Berry.
So you have some memories of those sisters, don't you?
I sure do. Yes.
There's a photograph here. Apparently, tell me a little about, there was a wild one, Auntie Ada.
That was Grandma's sister. Had plenty of go in her. That was a Knapp, yes.
What did you hear about her? And where was she up here?
Yeah, she had been up here, but mainly she stayed in Milton. And then finally, when she was married, she shifted to Queensland. And I can remember her in Queensland when I was about 21.
So you visited her on your honeymoon?
Yes, and there were younger ones, and I remember another one by the name of Thora. But the Ada one was, you know, she was the life of the party. She could ride a horse pretty well, apparently. I don't remember ever seeing her on a horse, but so I was told.
So you've got photographs of the men...
Cutting wood.
Cutting wood.
I would think it would be down Milton Way, wasn't up here. That's a long time ago.
So we're talking about the late 19th century, aren't we, really?
Yes, you are.
Dulcie. Tell me about Dulcie, who was born in 1898. She lived a good life, didn't she? You've got photos of Dulcie. Who's she?
She's Dad's sister, one of Dad's sisters. She never married, and she looked after Grandma and Grandpa when in their later years.
So they settled in Berry originally?
They settled in Berry, yes.
So when did they come up and settle there, do you know?
1923, it says that they came up from Milton.
And what street? And apparently you said the house is still there.
Yes, Railway Street in Berry, straight opposite the railway.
But they didn't have numbers then?
No, I don't think they had numbers. I know it was called St Elmo, and I know the people that live in it now.
So you remember visiting them?
Yes, always there. How
would you visit them?
Well, I don't know what we did when I was real young, because Dad didn't have a car, and well, we had a pony when we were younger, us kids did, but I don't remember riding a pony or into town. But Grandpa used to come out to the farm, and he rode a horse out to the farm from Berry. I can remember him turning up.
Did he work on the farm?
Not that I know of. I think he just come out to see how everybody was going.
Do you have any memories of Berry as a younger woman?
No, it's just changed absolutely unbelievably.
So it has changed. So you went to the church there?
Yes.
What was the town? Was it horse and cart in town then?
Yes, it would have been.
How would you get in a car to church? So
Well, we didn't, because we didn't have a car. I don't know what Mum and Dad must have done. I don't remember of sulky or anything out there, but I know when I was 8, that was when I started to walk to the road and catch people.
Catch a lift.
Catch a lift to Berry.
Do you remember swagmen?
Yes, I do remember them. I can remember probably seeing them walking along the side of the road.
Do you remember seeing the Feenies in their tractors going up the road, or?
Yes, but that was really later, long time later. Remember Pearl and Alan and Elaine and Evelyn, I remember them because they went to the same school as me. You know, there was Marshalls and Limreys and Urquharts and at Meroo, but I can remember them coming to school because I did all my schooling at Meroo, and it was a one-teacher school.
What did you learn at school? How were you? Was it
Not
chalk?
very much, I don't think.
Was it chalk?
Yes, it was chalk.
How did he teach you? Like, what were you using, a slate?
No, we had books. I don't remember a slate. We were all in the one room because I went from when I started school till I finished, it was in the one room. My whole 6 years or whatever it is at school was in the one room.
Did you have your own desk?
Yes, we had our own desk.
But did you go to that same desk every day?
Yes. You started at the front and went to the back.
As you progressed?
As you progressed.
As you got older?
As you got older.
What about eating?
Oh, you took your own lunch.
Did you have a knapsack or what?
Yes, we had school bags. As far as I can't remember to start off with, but I do know I walked home from school, and I know I went to school on the milk truck because the Turner girls and the Thorburn girls all were on the truck when I went. So the man that picked up our milk also took us to school. But I had to walk home because there was nothing to bring me home.
What route did you take?
The main road, and we'd walk past Hitchcock's. Elaine and Margaret walk with them, and they'd stop at their house. Then we'd walk a bit further along to Devitt's Lane, and we'd have Lola and Jim Hitchcock. They'd fall off the group. And then I must have been on my own after that, because Judith and Margaret, I don't know whether they ever walked to school. They're a bit younger than me, so...
Were there sulkies passing you or cars?
Don't remember that.
We're going back a while.
I know, too far.
So tell me, you've met your husband at the dance.
Yes.
What happened? Was it love at first sight?
Oh, I don't know. How
did you feel?
I had a fair few friends. I was in rural youth as well when I was young.
And what does that mean, rural youth? And tell me what you did.
Well, it was junior farmers. I can remember we went to something one day. I was in Berry rural youth or junior farmers. There was always a junior farmer man would come round to the school. Well, he'd bring us home sometimes because he'd be going back to Wiley's or somewhere, and he'd bring us home in his car sometimes when we were walking to school or so. But we never rode bikes to school.
You had no money for those?
Oh, I don't think so. No, we didn't have money.
Did you ever go to the milk factory?
At Berry I did. I don't remember much about that either, only that I do remember that my grandfather Davis took me over there one morning, and I guess it was to get milk. My grandfather Goodger had come in his horse and cart. I do remember that. I remember Grandpa Davis talking to Grandpa Goodger, and I know I was there, so that's all I remember about that. I wouldn't have been very old when my grandfather Goodger died either. He was James Goodger, Jimmy Goodger.
When did you get married?
We got married in 1960.
You're 21. And tell me where you got married.
Berry Uniting Church or Berry Methodist Church.
What sort of reception was it?
And we had a reception in the because those days a lot of the churches did the catering for a person that went to the church. Well, Harry's parents went to that church too, but I really didn't realise who they were till I met Harry. So I knew them because I was friendly with a lot of those people, because a lot of the Kelletts went to the Berry Church.
Where was Harry? Where did he farm? And who were his parents?
Frank and Ruby Kellett, and they farmed at Bundiwalla. Then they shifted to Far Meadow. I think they went to Far Meadow, and then Harry went to Camberwarra, but he was single when he went to Camberwarra.
And what was he farming there,
He was farming there.
They had land there, did they?
He had a little bit of land there, but it was hilly, all hilly.
He bought that land?
Yes. Then his father and mother had a farm out at Far Meadow. The other brother had been farming in different farms around the Shoalhaven. And then they decided they were getting too old, so the brother came back to work on the farm. They decided that they needed two out there on that farm, and they bought different areas of, well, we had Camberwarra, so we used to bring cattle from Far Meadow to Camberwarra when the cows were dry.
So you first went to Camberwarra as a bride?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the property. It was hilly. Where was it located in Camberwarra?
It was in Tannery Road, and it was right up at the top end where the dam is. Presumably the water for the Nowra town, and the dam wasn't very far from the house.
How big was that dam?
Oh, it was fairly big. Every now and again they drain it, but they don't use it for town supply anymore. I don't know what they use it for, if anything.
Was that your water supply as well?
No.
Where did you get your water?
I think Harry got water out of a creek somewhere there.
How many cows?
Oh, not many. Maybe again about 30. We didn't milk many cows.
Was there a silo there?
No.
Tell me about how it operated.
Oh, I went to the dairy a bit, but he managed the dairy on his own.
And you had a house there?
Yes.
And what are you doing? Sewing?
Well, no, I wasn't sewing. I suppose I was only cooking.
Yeah, well, that's
feeding
enough.
him. I know it is enough.
What were you cooking on?
Oh, well, it was a really old house, and we did have part of it remodelled, but nothing like they do today. Nothing. I think we had a combustion stove when, to start off with, I think I had a little elect. But the house was in two parts too when we first went up there, which was the thing that houses were, because they never had the kitchen joined onto the main part of the house. So it was separated. We lived in that for a few months while we did the other half up, and then we put a kitchen in the other half.
What about toilets?
Yeah, we had a toilet and bathroom and toilet and shower and everything.
So a flush toilet?
To
start with? You on septic?
Oh, we might have been on septic out there. We were on septic at Far Meadow, so we might have been septic out there. But to start off with, I think we were on pit toilet. And we were when I was on the farm at Meroo too.
Who'd come and clear the pit, or how would that work?
Oh, well, I learnt to do it. My brother and I learnt to do it.
No, tell me how that worked. I want to know.
Well, you dig a hole.
Yeah.
And take the pan out to it and tip it in and fill it up.
So how big was the tin?
Probably the size of a 4-gallon drum, because we had to do that when Dad and Mum were away. Well, there was nobody else there.
Okay,
We didn't ask Grandma to do it or Mum's cousin to do it. I remember doing that at Meroo. Didn't do it at Far Meadow, I know that. But maybe there was a system out at Far Meadow. I think it was flush, probably a septic out there. Can't remember where it was. Everybody would have used pits, I would think.
They were separate from the house?
Yes.
Was it scary?
No, you just get used to it. And again, it's not like today. There was nobody around, or a lot of the farms now are chopped up into blocks, and so you've got a neighbour 100 yards away. But the town used to have a pan man come through. I can remember that in Berry. I can remember it out at Gerringong at my aunt's. He didn't dig a hole, I know that. He took it somewhere, but yes, we had to dig a hole.
But the pan man would have collected everyone.
Yes, that's right.
What about pubs? Any of your family drink?
No.
No drinking?
No.
That's good.
Well.
Saves a bit of drama. Did you drink alcohol?
Probably a little bit, but when we were younger. But as we got older, we didn't bother.
Do you remember some of the, do you call them reverends or ministers or the clergymen?
I remember Mr. Bate because he married us, but I've got to know a lot since.
What did you call your community? Your parish or...?
Oh, I suppose that, but that's all changed too. I don't know whether we call them parishes anymore or whether they're what they are, but I belong to a group of ladies and we call ourselves a synod group, but it is connected to the church, but I'm the only one that goes to it. But it's it's a New South Wales one, but a lot of the time it's on Skype, and I'm on the phone.
Yes.
Because I don't have a computer. But I know who they all are because I meet them. It's only since COVID that all this has changed.
Just getting back to Camberwarra.
Yes.
So what memories do you have there? Your husband did his thing. Did you ever have to help in the dairy?
Yes, I did.
Did you have to tie their legs up or anything?
Yes. If they kicked you, you did.
Yeah, so you're still working that way on a stool, or what are you doing?
Yes.
Milking?
And milking. And we did have machines out there. We did have machines on the farm too, before Dad sold the farm. But...
Were they operating on power, or...?
Yes. And, yes, you put the cow in and you put some feed in front of her and then you tied her in the bale and tied the leg if she kicked you. Before I was married, I went and helped a friend for about 6 weeks on a farm, and it was the same thing there, you know. It was walk through dairies. But they're milking thousands of cows now on rotaries, and I've got a friend that I've been in his dairy and it's rotary, and it's totally different ball game.
So the cows were coming from Farm Meadow, your cows at Camberwarra?
Oh yes, we sold our cows at Camberwarra before we shifted to Farm Meadow.
How long were you at Camberwarra?
I think it was about 4 years. Harry was there longer than that. I can't remember how long he was there, but I was only there about 4 years.
And the milk would go to...
Bomaderry.
So who was collecting the milk at Camberwarra?
Curly Hanson.
And Curly Hanson?
Yes,
What was he like to you? Was he a big bloke, or...?
Yes, he was a big bloke and he was a bit of a character.
And he had...
Easy to get along with. Came from Bomaderry.
Whilst you were at Camberwarra, what children did you have?
I had 2 children then, Jane and Wendy.
How old were they then?
Wendy would have been about 18 months, I think, when we left Camberwarra. Jane, of course, was older.
How did you feel leaving Camberwarra?
Well, at the time it sounded as though it was going to be better for us, but I did like Camberwarra to live at rather than Berry, but we had good neighbours at Berry, so I probably shouldn't complain.
So why did you have to move to Farm Meadow?
Because the farm out there needed 2 people in the dairy, and we couldn't make enough on our farm at Camberwarra, so it was suggested that we go to live at Farm Meadow.
And who was farming there?
Harry and his brother.
And what's his brother's name?
Brother Robert and his wife Elaine. And they had 3 children, and they lived in town, and we lived on the farm.
And what cows are you milking there? How big's the herd?
100 head, around about that. Maybe it went a bit over the 100, depended on the season, and possibly when cows were calving.
Holsteins?
Holsteins and Guernseys. And we had the Guernseys because we knew a person that was selling his Guernseys, and they decided to buy the Guernseys and start showing the registered cattle.
Do you know who or where they bought them?
Yes, they bought them off Alex Rutledge.
Okay, so what era are we talking about here? Early...
It was between 60 and 80, 1960 and 1980 that we farmed at Farm Meadow.
But you still kept Camberwarra?
Yes, not all the time, because we sold Camberwarra and replaced it with another piece of land out near Farm Meadow that joined our farm.
So what's your address at Farm Meadow?
127 Coolangatta Road.
So how much acreage did that bring you up to?
Oh, maybe all up, maybe 200 acres, and that's a rough guess.
And what about flooding? Because it does flood round there.
Yes, it flooded at the back from Swamp Road back to our place.
You can't get away from the swamp.
No, we can't get away from the swamp.
Is that useless land, that kind of land, do you think?
Well, it wasn't, because possibly when we had a good season, the cows would go down there and graze, but there was a lot of sour grass type stuff down there.
What are you growing?
Well, we grew corn Coolangatta.
How did you store the corn?
Oh, in a pit.
So in a pit above ground?
Above ground, and covered with a tarpaulin.
With the tyres?
With the tyres.
You never buried corn?
Not that I know of. I don't remember it being buried out there.
What was your house like?
A really old house with a big kitchen, a lounge room, and about 5 bedrooms.
How many children did you end up having?
4 children after we went to Farm Meadow.
And their names?
David and Melissa.
What years were the kids born?
David was 1965 and Melissa was 68.
And the eldest girl was?
Because they were born at Camberwarra, that was 60 and 62.
Yeah, okay.
So the other 2 were born at Farm Meadow, so I'm at Farm Meadow now.
Okay.
So don't go back to Camberwarra.
The only thing I want to go back to is I've seen a photo of your husband in a rugby league uniform. Who did he play for?
He played for Bury Rugby League Football Club.
In the 50s, was it?
In the 50s, yes. I know they won 3 premierships, I think 3 years in a row in the 50s. But I never saw him play football because when he shifted to Camberwarra, he had to play with Kangaroo Valley. He was dairying on his own, so he really couldn't go over to the valley and play football. And he wasn't allowed to play in Bury anyway, because that was the boundary. Things have changed now, as everybody will know. They can play anywhere.
Do you know what position he played and what division?
Oh, he played A grade, but I think he was a forward.
When you're at Camberwarra, what about friends or neighbours? Do you remember some of your farms around you and the family?
Yes, the Griffiths were across the creek from us and the Soapers were on the other side of us. They were the close neighbours.
And they're dairying?
They were both dairying, yes.
You were a member of the co-op?
Yes, they were a member of the Berry Co-op.
And
going back then, Camberwarra, we belonged to Shellhaven Dairy Company. Well, you could buy feed there, butter, those sort of things you could buy there. But because we had our own cows, we didn't worry about cream.
Were you ever separating milk?
No, not there.
But you have?
Yes.
At Meroo?
Yes.
A cream separator?
Well, I don't remember a great deal about the separator, but I do know it was there, and I know milk used to come into it, and it was divided, the milk was divided, separated somehow. But we used to make our own butter down at the farm at Meroo, but we had a churn. So we'd bring the cream up and put it in the churn. And my brothers and I had to turn the churn. And that was always a fight, because nobody liked doing it, because you'd be winding this handle for ages.
Your kids are growing up, are they? What school are they going to?
They all went to Berry Public School, and then they went to Bomaderry High School.
A bus would pick them up?
And a bus would pick them up.
On Coolangatta Road? Or
on Coolangatta Road, yes.
What are you thinking about doing? You thinking about going to work at this stage?
Yes, I decided to go to work. Around about 72, I went and worked as a cook at the Berry Training Farm, government farm, where they milked cows as well, because the boys there had to work in the dairies. These boys all came from broken homes and all that sort of thing. Don't really know a lot about the boys. I do know one boy that left there and went and worked on a property beside Harry's parents, and Harry and him were pretty good buddies to the end of their lives. They were from everywhere, all over the state.
So cooking, what are you cooking for them, and where?
Oh, there was about 60 kids, but maybe it wasn't that many. There were 2 houses. One house was called Coolangatta, and the other house was called Shellhaven. And it was like a big dormitory that the boys all slept in. But they always made the lady in the kitchen had to have at least 4 boys in the kitchen. They were presumably supposed to help the cook. Most of the time they were a bigger hindrance than a help, but that's beside the point. So I had to try and teach them things, and they hated it. I never had any kids in there that really liked doing it, and if they had any chance of taking the garbage out, they'd hide behind the garbage bin, hiding from me, they thought, but I could see them out the window most of the time.
And how long were you there?
12 months.
You only stayed a year?
I only stayed a year, yes, because I think the lady I relieved came back.
So where'd you go from there?
I then went to Coolangatta and I worked for the bishops, yes.
And what were you doing up there?
I was a motel cleaner. When I first started, there were buses come in from Victoria and they'd have morning tea at Coolangatta. I mean, they'd had breakfast, dinner and tea all the way up the coast. But when they got to Coolangatta, they'd have morning tea and sometimes, unexpectedly, the bus would turn up and sometimes we weren't prepared. So I used to end up down in the restaurant trying to get morning tea out for those people. It would be there, but it wasn't always prepared, so we had to get in recruits, and they always came from up at the motel.
How many rooms at the motel?
30. They weren't all in a row. There were a group of 6, there were a group of 4, there was a group of 3, there was 1, which was called the convict cottage, and I think there was another group of 5. There was another separate one as well. But they were all over the place. They weren't in a big long row where it was easy. It was in the village, all around the village, yes. All around the main house.
You were there for how long?
I was at Coolangatta for 20 years.
It's a long time.
And in that 20 years, they started a bush banquet night. Might have been every week. Then I became a waitress. I did that as well as doing the units of a daytime. And then finally, a little while before I left, we'd started a breakfast for the guests. Instead of breakfast in their rooms, we started breakfast, and I was a breakfast cook. And I think we had to allocate for about 100.
Who's still around the bishops today that you might keep in contact with or?
I don't really have much to do with them, but I do see them now and again.
What are their names?
Oh, Paul, Bruce, Robin, Megan and Greg.
They're all siblings, are they?
Yes.
And was it a big operation? Were there a lot of staff?
Oh, well, yes. There were probably about 6 cleaners from time to time, but you wouldn't use 6 cleaners every day. You were rostered on. In the restaurant, there were quite a few because you had to have a chef, barman, waitresses, and they were in the same situation, rostered on. And I have no idea how many of those there were.
When did the golf course come into play?
Yes, the golf course was in my time.
That was ran separately, was it, to you?
No, it was run through the office, from the office. Their maintenance man that did the golf course as well. Tom Prosser was Prosser, where he was a maintenance man and he was good.
So tell me about how you get to work. Were you driving then?
Oh yes, I had a licence from when I was 17, so I was driving all the time. I drove myself to work. Sometimes I rode the bike to work, because when we shifted to Shoalhaven Heads, I was only down the road.
So you meant a motorbike?
No, a push bike.
So tell me, you got your licence, was that just from a cornflakes box, or did you...
Nearly. No, I did go to Nowra and get a licence like any normal person would have.
And they were issued by the state?
RTA or something. Oh yes, I had to hurry because my brother was close behind my heels. And I couldn't get the licence quick enough, otherwise if he'd had his and I wouldn't have, that would have been dreadful.
You moved off Far Meadow, why?
Because both boys were getting sick of dairying. They both had sons. Well, we had one and they had 2, but ours didn't want to stay on the farm, and his son had left the farm before that because he was working on the farm, and he'd left the farm, so then the boys decided that they didn't want to carry on. So they sold all their cattle, sold the farm, and we shifted to Shoalhaven Heads.
That was sort of around the early 80s?
Yes.
And you had a house built, did you?
We had a house built.
Tell me how that worked. You designed it?
Yes.
How was that arranged?
Through a fella that was a neighbour, but he was a builder. He built out there, out at Far Meadow. He built the house for us.
What was his name?
Bruce Burrows.
And you had an idea of what you wanted with it?
Yes, we had an idea what we wanted.
Was that kind of your retirement house?
Well, I don't know. When we shifted out there, things happened along the road, so that's why we left Shoalhaven Heads. I had a mother sick and I had a grandchild born 28 weeks or something, and they all needed help. So we decided, I got sick of travelling, so we decided to come into here. Yes, we're on the north side of the highway on Bomaderry Creek.
It's a bit different this side. I bet it was different. How long you been here?
25 years.
So it's a bit different, isn't it? I bet it was different when you arrived here.
Put a Anglican school up the road. The TAFE has been always in the place it is still situated, but the highway traffic is absolutely atrocious.
So how do you get across?
Well, you run a risk. A lot of the time I have to run.
Because you get a bus there, don't you?
Yes, I catch the bus into town when I can. Only to make sure the buses continue to run, because as you get older, if you can't drive your car, well, you need some sort of transport. And the taxis now are atrocious, so you wouldn't want to be relying on them.
Tell me some of your volunteer organisations that you've worked in and still do.
Well, I've worked with Meals on Wheels, but I don't do that anymore. I joined Red Cross when we came to Shoalhaven Heads. I've continued to stay with Red Cross, so now I belong to Nowra. I've always volunteered around the church, like at the op shop and...
You were in the caravan club.
Oh yes, we were in a caravan club for about 20 years.
Because you travelled a bit.
We travelled a lot.
When you were at Shoalhaven?
Yes. We've travelled around Australia, yes. We've crossed the Nullarbor 5 times, and we've done a fair bit of travelling. After I worked at Coolangatta, or while I was working at Coolangatta, I decided that I had a chance to get my heavy vehicle licence. Robert Wilson, the bus company, or Gordon Wilson, his father, they had a small bus that ran between Shoalhaven Heads and Berry with the school kids. I'd said to Bob, I wouldn't mind, because his wife had to leave, and I was going to take over from her. I went and got my licence on the bus. I was only driving the little bus, the 23-seater. So I drove it for a couple of years, and that was an experience and a half, because the kids used to string me up the tree and then chop it down when I got to the top. But one day, when I was taking the kids to school across Swamp Road, it was flooded. And I got to the top of the hill, and I could see it was flooded right across, and I said to the kids, well, we're going to have to turn round and go back through Shoalhaven Heads. And I was supposed to meet Bob at another intersection. And I said, we won't do that, so I'll probably have to take you to school. Oh, no, you don't have to do that, Mrs. Kellett. You just drive the bus through the water. And I said, what? Oh, no, that's all you do. So we got into the water. Luckily, I'd had experience with water. And then must have been about a mile, and we got to a culvert. And then they said, well, you'll have to stop here, because Bob used to get us out to see if there were planks on this little bridge. And I said, well, there's no way you're getting out with me, because I'm not stopping. If one goes, we all go. I could see out the front, and I could see the planks were all there, so I got across. Still had to go to Bomaderry, got into Bomaderry, and Bob said, where have you been? And he said, I've never driven in the floodwater. That was the first mistake. Not that it worried Bob, but the kids. So I just had to think a lot about what the kids were coming to tell me after that.
I'm a bit worried about what happened with this tree.
The tree?
When they hung you up.
That's a joke.
Oh, okay.
They take you to the top of the tree and chop it down.
Well, that's right. They've always got... They're
yes.
playing with you, aren't they?
And then I drove the taxi for Bob for a while. Then his father came back on and did a lot of it, because I decided that, well, his father was there driving and I didn't need to, but I did. When we had the bus, I did the high school kids run, and then I did the primary school kids run into Berry. And then they had a taxi, and I used to do it in the taxi, because the numbers went down. So I don't know how many years I worked for Bob, but it was a few, 3 or 4 or something. So then I had my big truck licence. So then one year when we were in Adelaide, a friend said, who I'd helped for 17 years, said, when we go to Melbourne this year, he had nobody else, only Harry and I think, well, you can drive the truck, because I'll start off and I'll get tired, because it's a long way between Adelaide and Melbourne, and we do it in one day. So I actually drove the truck twice, once going and once coming back to where they lived at Mount Gambier.
And what are you carrying?
8 head of cattle.
Livestock.
So then when I drove the bus for Uniting Care, which was in about 2000, the first time I drove that, the ladies in there or people in the retirement village had never seen a lady drive a bus. I backed into where we had to pick them up. When I got in, they said, "Where have you driven?" And I said, "Oh, well, the last drive was a truck between Melbourne and Adelaide or something for a couple of hours with cattle on." So the smart lady in the back seat said, "Moo." So that's what I mean about people joking with you and being a bit smart. So then I drove that bus for 20 years. I think I was 82 when I last drove it.
They paid you for that, didn't they?
No, I was a volunteer.
Oh.
I've only ever done volunteering work.
It's an extraordinary commitment. Whereabouts in Shoalhaven did you live?
Scott Street. You were in town anyway, and it was a different environment from the farm, because I'd never lived in town really.
This is at Shoalhaven Heads?
This is Shoalhaven Heads.
And when you say town, you mean Berry?
No, just living in town. We've always lived on a farm. We've lived on a farm for probably 70-odd years, I don't know.
Yes.
That was life then, and I don't think people went and had a cup of coffee with every Joe Blow around the countryside when we were young, because we only went to town once a week, probably. If we did go to town, sometimes we had lunch in town. But we didn't go to town for like people do today. When I first went to Shoalhaven Heads, I heard a neighbour said that, and I was playing tennis at the time, well, she wasn't going to cook Friday night because she never cooks Friday night. And I wondered why, but apparently this is what townies did. So I just had to, not that I changed my times, I still cooked, but I was just amused at the way town people lived compared to what the country people lived. And I think it's probably still the same today.
What about your tennis? Now, you liked tennis. You played...
Oh, yes, I played tennis when I was
You've mentioned it,
young.
I think. Yes. What about at Shoalhaven Heads? What were you doing
I played
there?
tennis there too, but then I went from tennis to hockey. When I went to Farm Meadow, I decided to play hockey as a change. So then, and then I had a season of cricket. I think I had a season of basketball. And then I had quite a few years playing touch football.
And where's all this happening?
Oh, mainly in Berry, Shoalhaven Heads or Nowra.
Was it fun?
Yes, we all enjoyed ourselves, but I preferred touch football to all the other sports. I think we played for a Heads team and I played for a Nowra team.
About your husband's illness, and he was 90.
And he had a stroke. He had a stroke at 90.
Where?
Here.
At home.
Mm.
And what happened? You call the ambulance?
Yes, because I knew straight away that he'd had a stroke, luckily. So I called the ambulance, and then in the next 5 years, that was what probably came against him. But when he was on the farm, he used to chaff up dry hay. And I think the dry hay dust got in his lungs. In his last 6 months, he had to go onto oxygen. And then in the meantime, I think in those last 6 months, something happened in his stomach, and he was just too old for him to put him through all sorts of things. So they just let life do whatever it's wanted to do.
When did your husband pass away?
That was on the 19th of December, 22.
And where is he buried today?
His ashes are in the Berry Cemetery.
And you had a service for him?
Yes, out at Warragee. I didn't count, but I was told there was about 300 there. Plus it went online and that amount again was added.
Did you have a wake for him?
Yes, just at Reflections. I thought because of his age, I thought 50 people will come, but that didn't happen. So because we had the small area, we couldn't do very much about it. But a lot of people decided that there was too many people there and went home. So that's fair enough.
This brings me to the end of Season 1, Episode 10. Thank you again, Turf Co and McGoldrick's estate agents, for supporting me and my work this season. Season 2 is currently in the making, but is dependent on attracting sponsors. So I'll be out and about in the following months drumming up support to produce Season 2. I'm aiming to launch September this year. A donation button has recently been added to the podcast episodes, and I encourage listeners to get behind me if they value what they have heard. If I told you how much these digital skills and experience I possess cost in the marketplace, you'd probably have a nosebleed. But I offer in-kind support to Season 1 as my investment in your history. Ask yourself, what are these digital engagements worth for future generations before they are gone forever? No government funding at any tier, local, state or federal, exists for this project at the moment. I am trying. Thank you, John Miller and Terry Farl, for being there for me throughout this season. I'm currently in conversation with Nowra Library to ensure both the sound recordings and digitised private archives be hosted online through their library network as digital archives. I'm signing off for now, and thank you sincerely for tuning in and supporting my work and the stories of incredible people, the backbone of this region throughout the 20th century. I have had a great time meeting these farmers that are presented in 10 episodes. How fortunate I am to engage in the landscape. Take care. ThereseSweeney.com.au also hosts the podcast series.